Stop asking, start calling. Let me ask you a direct, almost uncomfortable question. What if the reason so many people pray, believe, and yet remain in the same place isn't a lack of faith, but an excess of requests? That's right. Most people never stop to question this. From a young age, they're taught that asking is humility, that waiting is virtue, that begging is a sign of devotion. But there's a paradox here that almost no one points out. The more you ask for, the more you reinforce the idea that you still don't have it. And that changes everything. Now think about this honestly. How many times have you said, "I believe," but inside you were tense, insecure, waiting for some external sign to calm down? How many times have you prayed for prosperity, peace, or guidance, and then immediately went back to acting as if nothing were possible? This doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But it also reveals a powerful blind spot, because there's a verse in the Bible, explicit, blatant, that shows that God doesn't work in the way you ask. He works in the way you ask. Call, and when you understand that, something breaks inside. Romans 4:17 says that God, He calls things that are not as if they already were. It's not a pretty metaphor. It's not religious poetry. It's a principle of creation. And here comes the counterintuitive statement. Maybe you don't need to pray anymore. Maybe you do. Change the place from where you are. Because when you stop asking like someone who's waiting and start calling like someone who's already received, reality responds differently. Quickly, silently, inevitably. In this video, I'm not going to teach you magic phrases or empty positivity. I'm going to show you why asking weakens, why calling activates, and how to align words, body, and identity to live in the "it already is." If this is true, and you will feel if it is, then today could be the day you stop waiting for signs and start becoming one. The hidden code that almost everyone reads, but almost no one lives by. Romans 4:17. I've seen this movie 1,000 times. A person reads the Bible, finds it beautiful, even gets emotional, and yet continues living in scarcity mode, as if heaven were a service counter. And then comes the twist. Romans 4:17 doesn't sound like a request. It sounds like method. God calls things that are not as though they already were. This isn't poetry for posting. It's a key to unlocking mind, faith, and prosperity. And when someone truly understands this, it's impossible to unsee it. It's like when you learn a trick and think, "How come I never noticed this before?" Now notice how most people live, describing what they see. Low bank account? I'm broke. Closed door? It's not for me. Body ache? This is just me. This is the exact opposite of stop asking, start calling. Because asking, at its core, is declaring absence. It's saying, not yet. And Romans 4:17 touches precisely on this wound. It teaches that the visible world is not the boss. It's the employee. Reality becomes the effect of your "it already is." It seems counterintuitive, I know, but that's where the power lies. I usually explain it with a simple, almost silly, and therefore brilliant analog. An architect enters an empty plot of land and says, "This will be the living room. That will be the door." It's not delusion. It's vision with authority. So in practice, if someone wants to practice Romans 4:17 without becoming a positive freak, they start small, change the language, and sustain the state. Instead of "I'm trying," it becomes "I'm building." Instead of "one day I'll get out of debt," it becomes "I'm already getting out, and I act like someone who is getting out." And to anchor it in the body, I recommend a 2-minute ritual. Breathe. Give thanks as if you have already received. Fake it till you make it, but with faith. And repeats. I don't ask. I call. It already is. But there's a detail that almost nobody notices about ask to call. And that's what opens the next topic. Why asking weakens and calling activates. The difference that changes everything. I often say something that throws people off balance on first contact. The universe doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to the place from which you speak. Asking stems from need. Calling stems from identity. When someone says, "God, give me," even with faith, the whole body still vibrates with, "I don't have," shakir. But when the person says, "Thank you because it already is," something changes in the tone, the posture, the gaze. It's a whole different ballgame. It's not spiritual arrogance, it's alignment. And this alignment, little by little, educates the surrounding environment. Consider a very common situation. Two people want to prosper. The first wakes up saying, "I hope an opportunity arises today." The second says, "Today I'm acting like someone who's already on the right track." The first waits for signs. The second becomes the signal. And look how curious. Opportunities tend to find those who walk with this kind of silent certainty. Not because the world is magical, but because confident people speak differently, decide faster, and stand by their choices when they're afraid. That's when "stop asking, start calling" ceases to be a pretty phrase and becomes daily practice. I always recommend a simple, almost invisible but powerful exercise. Before ordering anything, the person pauses and asks themselves, "If this were already mine, how would I be breathing now?" Relaxed shoulders? A lighter face? A firmer tone of voice? Then, she assumes this state for 60 seconds. That's all. No request, no plea, just presence. Because calling isn't about convincing God, it's about ceasing to contradict oneself internally. And when that contradiction disappears, something begins to reorganize itself. But there's still a lack of understanding. Why do so many people call for help, but it's not sustained? And that brings us straight to the next point. The silent mistake. Calling it right, but vibrating it wrong. Here's a warning that almost no one likes to hear, but everyone needs to hear. It's no use calling with your mouth if your body is denying it. Many people even declare it beautifully, quote verses, repeat affirmations, but inside they remain tense, distrustful, expecting the worst. It sounds harsh, but it's true. The body becomes a leak of faith, and the field, whether you call it God, mind, life, or universe, picks up this noise instantly. The result? The person says it already is, but lives as if maybe it never will be. I usually explain this with a simple scene. Imagine someone saying, "I trust you," but with their arms crossed, brow furrowed, and voice trembling. The real message isn't trust, it's fear. It works the same way with faith. If someone declares prosperity but continues to act as if they're constantly protecting themselves from failure, the signal they send isn't consistent. That's why "stop asking, start calling" requires something deeper. Train your body to believe before the test. It's not pretending. It's internal re-education. In practice, I suggest a very applicable exercise. Choose an area, money, health, or relationships, and observe how your body reacts when you say, "It's already done." Does your chest tighten? Do you hold your breath? Do you feel like laughing nervously? Great. That's the point of adjustment. Instead of forcing the phrase, the person begins by adjusting their state. Take a deep breath. Relax their body. Slow down. Only then say it. Because when body and words are in agreement, the statement gains weight. And that's precisely why. That invisible weight, which explains why some react quickly and others stall well before the finish line. The subject of the next topic. Do you want me to continue down this path, or would you like some adjustments, more personal examples, more practical step-by-step instructions, or more biblical connection? When calling someone becomes an identity and not just a technique, here I delve into a crucial point. Calling only works consistently when it stops being something he does and it becomes something that you. And technique is tiring. Identity sustains. In the beginning, the person even tries, declares it in the morning, gets excited, but by the afternoon has already returned to the old reactive mode. Why? Because you're still putting your faith in it, not living faith. Romans 4:17 does not describe an isolated act of God. It describes a way of being. If everything you desired were already resolved, what would change in your behavior today? It's not about spending money you don't have, nor about denying problems. It's about micro-adjustments to identity, speaking more calmly, stopping over-explaining, making decisions without constantly seeking validation. That's where stop asking, start calling takes shape. The person doesn't become arrogant. They become focused, and that changes how the world responds to it. A practical example helps to bring things to a close. Someone who sees themselves as almost prosperous keeps putting things off. I'll invest later. I'll study later. I'll get organized later. But someone who sees themselves as under construction but on the right track acts differently. They read books like Think and Grow Richer. The Power of the Subconscious Mind. She organizes finances and manages her daily energy, not because she needs to prove anything, but because it aligns with who she has already chosen to be. It just makes sense. And when this identity begins to solidify, something curious happens. The person stops fighting with the current reality. They don't deny what they see, but they also don't submit to it. They live in a powerful middle ground between still and already. But maintaining this posture in a world full of distractions, fears, and demands is not trivial. And there's a clear reason why many people slip up precisely there. And that's what opens the next topic. Why does the world test those who start calling? Here's something to help avoid a lot of frustration. When you change your vibration, the world responds, but not always in the way you expect. Many people think that by stopping asking and starting to call, everything becomes a straight line. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. What usually happens first are subtle tests. A delay here, a door that seems to close there, someone doubting you. It's not punishment, it's calibration. It's as if reality is asking, are you serious, or is it just excitement today? I like to compare it to weight training. When you start training, the weight doesn't disappear. It even seems heavier at first. But it's precisely this friction that strengthens you. With applied faith, it works the same way. If someone declares, I already live in abundance, but panics at the first unforeseen financial setback, the field hasn't closed yet. The secret isn't avoiding the test, it's don't ask again when he appears. To ask is to retreat. To call in these moments is to maintain silence, composure, and decisiveness. In practice, I suggest a simple yet powerful approach during testing. Reduce the amount of explaining. Less complaining, less justifying, less victim mentality. Instead, the person maintains small, consistent actions. Continues studying, continues organizing, continues managing emotional energy. If it's about money, for example, I suggest something very concrete. Read, think, and grow rich. Keep a notebook by your side and apply one principle per week, or start basic financial control, even with little money. That's calling with your body. And here's the key point. Those who pass the tests without reverting to the requested mode enter a different level of internal confidence. It's not euphoria, it's solidity. The person realizes they no longer depend on external signals to sustain the "it's already done." But there's one last adjustment, even more silent, that separates those who experience occasional results from those who change their lives for good. And that's what the next topic will reveal. The final adjustment. When silence speaks louder than words. Here I deliver something that seems too simple. And precisely for that reason, it is ignored. There comes a point where speaking less expresses more. Initially, declaring helps to reprogram. But then, the excess of words becomes noise. The person who truly began to call no longer feels the need to announce convince, or explain. They enter a state of confident silence, almost like a quiet authority. And this silence weighs heavily. It is in this silence that the "it already is" stabilizes. I often say that there is a stark difference between those who says and who given. Those who affirm repeat phrases. Those who emanate change the rhythm. They walk differently, respond differently, choose differently. They don't argue as much, don't justify themselves as much, don't engage in pointless disputes. It's as if the body says what the mouth no longer needs to prove. And curiously, it is at this stage that doors begin to open without visible effort. The right people appear, invitations arise, solutions find their way. In practice, the exercise here is almost meditative. Choose a time of day. It could be before bed, and spend 2 minutes in total silence, feeling as if everything is already resolved. No phrases, no requests, no elaborate visualizations. Just sensation. If anxiety arises, observe it. If doubt arises, breathe. This training teaches something profound. The field responds more to the state than to discourse, and when the state becomes established, life follows. And then something transformative happens. The person realizes they are no longer trying to change reality. They simply lives from a new center. The external world begins to adjust almost as a natural consequence. But this brings a silent responsibility. Everything you feel and sustain now creates ripples. And understanding this weight, without fear but with awareness, is what prepares the ground for the next and final point. The invisible responsibility. Everything you uphold creates. Here I close the cycle with a truth that is both frightening and liberating. When you stop asking and start calling, you can no longer outsource your own life. There is no longer such a thing as, "it was bad luck," "it was the other person," or "it was the system." Because from the moment a person understands Romans 4:17 as a code, and not just a pretty phrase, they acknowledge that what sustains them internally, emotions, recurring thoughts, states, is shaping their external world. It's empowering, but it's also demanding. You let me make it clear that this doesn't mean guilt. Guilt paralyzes. Responsibility is active. The difference is subtle, but crucial. Guilt says, "I messed everything up." Responsibility says, "I can adjust now." And this adjustment doesn't happen in grand rituals, but in daily micro-choices. The type of conversation you nurture, the type of content you consume, the type of thought you allow to live rent-free. All of this is continuous calling. All of this is telling the field who you are. A very real example helps to make the penny drop. Two people go through the same financial difficulty. One spends the day complaining, explaining, reliving the problem. The other feels the fear, but chooses to maintain gratitude, organization, and vision. Same situation, completely different paths. Over time, the realities separate. Not by luck, but by internal coherence. That's why he insists. Calling is not a one-off event. It's a present style. And when a person understands this, something changes completely. They stop looking for more techniques and begin to refine their state. Less anxiety, more clarity. Less urgency, more direction. It is at this point that stop asking, start calling ceases to be an external teaching and becomes an internal axis. And now that all the points have been revealed, there is an inevitable question that needs to be asked right at the beginning of the video. A question that nudges, confronts, and calls the viewer to a new place. Now let me really tease you. After all this, the question is no longer, does it work? The question is, what will you support from today onwards? Because knowledge without application becomes just another video watched. You already understand that asking stems from lack, and calling stems from identity. You've realized that reality responds less to words and much more to the state you emanate. So, who do you choose to be when you turn off this video? Think about your practical life. If you started today living as someone who is already on the right path, what would change in your decisions? How would you talk to people? How would you handle money, time, and your dreams? What would you stop putting off? What would you stop justifying? Because calling out isn't shouting to the heavens, it's aligning thought, emotion, and action on the same axis. And that, whether you like it or not, changes destinies. So do this simple exercise today. Choose an area, take a step back from your life, and decide to stop asking for it. It's not about denying reality. It's about ceasing to submit to it. Live the next few days as if you've already crossed the bridge. Observe your posture, your tone of voice, your small choices. And then tell me about it in the comments. What changed first? The world or you? This exchange is powerful because when one awakens, others awaken along with it. If this content made sense to you, if something clicked in there, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here we're not talking about superficial faith. We're talking about applied awareness, identity, and rooted prosperity. And if you know someone who's always asking, waiting, belittling themselves, share this video. Sometimes all a person needs isn't more effort. It's a new inner place to live from.